What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college basketball. And today we have an elite day of hoops. It is Friday the 13th. A lot of conference championships, quarterfinals, semifinals. There's no championships actually today, but we're down to the wire in these leagues, the best of the best remaining. So we'll get into all of that. Before we get started, I want to thank anyone who is watching along live, interacting in the chat. Those two things help us immensely. And if you're watching after the fact and you liked the video, subscribe to the channel, or left a comment, those help a small channel like this immensely. And I truly do appreciate it as we try to grow and really just continue doing this in the future. As we get into the game breakdowns, we will be discussing sides and totals. So if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. And I know we're doing this an hour late today, just one housekeeping thing. We will return to 8 a.m. Central Time tomorrow. Fewer games, so hopefully we can get a little more under our belt. We're mainly going to go in kind of like a chronological order today as we have early tip-off. So let's go to the first tip-off of the day. This one is 10 a.m. my time. We have George Washington and St. Louis. St. Louis is a 7-point favorite here. The total, 161.5. So interestingly, George Washington, they've been fairly banged up through the regular season, but now the tides have kind of shifted. One interesting thing we saw last time St. Louis came out was a limited Robbie Avila. And then he came out in a post-game press conference and announced kind of that he's playing through plantar fasciitis. So I don't know how healthy Robbie Avila is at this point. And I think this team is still probably live to make the tournament at large, just as is, even with a loss here. As we get into the resumes, they haven't done themselves any favors recently. Through the last month, they've dropped games to Rhode Island, Dayton, and George Mason. All of those teams are outside the top 80. So after a pretty flawless body of work through the first half of February, this team has taken on some water. With all that said, I still think they're pretty safe. You look at all power ratings, they still come out ranked number 40th in the country, according to KenPom, and we'll use them for rankings throughout the show. They're just more accurate than other sources like the AP and whatever. But George Washington still comes in 83rd despite being 18-14. And they have a number of bad losses. Like this team lost to Delaware and Loyola Chicago, both outside the top 275. And they have a couple good wins. They did beat South Florida, who's the most likely to represent the American, and they beat George Mason as well, another good team. And when they're at full strength, they actually are a pretty tricky stylistic matchup. This team on paper is taller than St. Louis. They're better on the glass than St. Louis, although that is pretty close. I mean, we're talking two teams within 10 ranking spots of each other. But a lot of George Washington's rebounding comes on the offensive end. That is a stark contrast against St. Louis, who's better defensively. So it'll be interesting to see where that plays out, because first time we saw this matchup, it was only a 3-point game. St. Louis won by 3 at home, and George Washington was a little bit better inside. That's a shooting percentage stat. St. Louis got him right back from 3, but when we talk about rebounds and some of the peripheral stats in that particular game, rebounds, turnovers, and fouls were actually dead even, like no separation whatsoever. So you get into some of the shooting metrics, stylistics, defensive metrics. George Washington is a pretty good shooting team. They take a lot of threes, and they're 47th in effective field goal percent. You're going to see them use pick and rolls, post-ups. Rafael Castro is back from injury. He is very strong inside. And then they have multiple three-point shooters. Christian Jones, Trey Dinkins, Trey Autry, all are at least at 37% or above. Now, St. Louis is one of the best defenses in this conference, if not the single best. They try to limit you on the glass and via pick and roll. They're probably most vulnerable against guards that can get past you, drive at the rim, which George Washington has some of. But they do have 3 of the top 10 defenders in this conference, led by Robbie Avila at 6'10", protecting the rim. We just don't know how healthy he is at this point. But on the other end, St. Louis is 3rd in effective field goal percentage. I mean, this team can just rain threes. They're taking a ton of them. And they're unique in the fact that they use a ton of pick and pops. And that's basically just a Robbie Avila set. He's hitting 41% of his threes. And Quentin Jones, Trey Green, Ishan Sharma, they're all hitting at least 39%. So it's a very, very good three-point shooting team. And Avila is one of the bigger reasons. But again, Now that Rafael Castro is back, it at least gives George Washington some semblance of rim protection. There's just no escaping George Washington's defense. They're cut behind St. Louis. But Castro is one of the best defenders in this conference. He's a 6'11 rim protector, and it gives Tyrone Marshall some help. So with the two of them, I think they're a little bit better than what they put on paper this year. Talked about all the peripheral stuff. When you project it moving forward, you're probably not looking at a lot of advantages one way or the other. George Washington is a little better with the turnovers, but again, that was not something that was a big factor in the first game. As far as tempo goes, both of these teams coming in a little slower over the last 6 weeks. George Washington's had the biggest drop. They're down to 135 in tempo after coming in 82nd. But the model has the 78.8 for George Washington, 84.4 for St. Louis, and I tend to agree. I think St. Louis is the better team. I would favor them in this game, but not by this many points. And I think stylistically, this makes some sense. One, George Washington's played a lot of the year injured. Two, the first game was very competitive. And three, a lot of the stylistics suggest it's at least pretty close. So we played at +7 in this game. And before we move on quickly, if you're ever interested in the projections, we do have a score projection for every single game. So those of you interested in sides and totals, it's in the Discord, which is linked below. And we also do player projections. So you get everything from minutes, points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, turnovers, whatever you can think of, it is down there. And I appreciate anyone who has supported, trying to be flexible there with all of the options. Billikens may be the creepiest mascot in college hoops. There might be some other ones. Don't feel great about it, but hit the under on George Washington, St. Louis. I mean, the tempo is going down for both of these teams, so I can see that too. Is Miami, Ohio going to make the tournament? Yes, they are. They are for sure. All right. Next up, another early game, Kentucky and Florida. We've seen this game play out twice now. In the first matchup, Florida won 92-83, a 9-point victory. That one was at home. And they outshot basically Kentucky across the board. Florida dominated inside. They collected 8 more rebounds, generated 7 more fouls. I mean, there's not really too much to say in the first game. And then Florida won the second one, 84-77. This time they weren't as efficient inside, but they hit 44% of their threes. This time Kentucky kept it a lot closer on the boards, but Florida still generated 9 more fouls. And that's kind of just what you get when you're playing against Condon, Hawken, and Chinyelu inside. So a lot of advantages Florida's direction. This should come as no surprise. Resume-wise, Kentucky's 27th in the country despite their 12 losses, and they do have a number of good wins. St. John's, Tennessee twice, Vanderbilt. But the only team that really has a strong front court out of those 3 is St. John's, who is kind of, a poor man's version of Florida. But then you get to Florida's resume. My goodness, outside of some early season blips on the radar, this team has been awesome. 11-game win streak. They beat Tennessee, Bama, Vanderbilt, Arkansas. The one thing I'll say there is you're not really facing any good front courts. And on paper, Kentucky's not bad. Malachi Moreno has been much improved this year. And some of the stats in this game are closer than you might think. Like Kentucky's 18th in effective height. Florida's 13th. Kentucky's 38th in rebounding. Florida's 1st. So yeah, Florida still has the advantage there, but it's not as wide as you might think. Kentucky is actually 85th defending the perimeter. That's basically one of the better metrics among the top-end teams Florida's faced. I don't know. I'm actually somewhat tempted on a Kentucky spot here. They've been very volatile. Their shooting percentages are pretty bad. 145th in three-point percentage. It's basically just what does Colin Chandler give you? Because Otega Owe is not shooting a ton of threes. He's mainly a driver. And you kind of need to be a good three-point shooting team to beat Florida because you're not scoring inside. So I'm hesitant here. I still don't know if Kentucky has enough juice. As far as the number goes, I mean, they've already kept it inside this number twice this year and once on the road as well. So now you're on a neutral court. The periphery is not really advantageous either way. Florida will generate more fouls than Kentucky, but we'll see how wide that ends up getting. Turnovers, neither team forces many, so not expecting that to play a major role. But Florida's the better team here. The model has this very close. Kentucky, 73.6. Florida, 84.4. I don't know. I'm like literally right on the fence. I had to put something on the screen, so it put Florida -11. But honestly, looking at this and talking through it, I might be talking to myself into a Kentucky. But regardless, there's not really much point in spending a lot more time on this. I'm not going to play either side in this game more than likely unless there's some drastic line movement or something happens live in this game. I think this one is pretty efficient, but I can see honestly a case to be made either direction. One that is pretty interesting, and I've actually seen Michigan take more money. They're currently minus 12.5 against Ohio State in a game with a 154 total. Injuries in this game, Brandon Noel has not played for Ohio State in some time. It seems like he'll be back for the NCAA tournament. And then Michigan's LJ Kaysen tore his ACL. First time these teams played, it was exactly 12 points. Michigan won 74-62. They dominated inside. They out-rebounded Ohio State 36-27, generated 4 more fouls. That should come as no surprise. Second matchup was much wider. Michigan won 82-61. That time they were on the road. Again, domination inside, rebounding gap 43-31. It's kind of a spot where, like the game we just talked about, Michigan might be able to name their score, except I think they might be doing it a little bit easier. Ohio State is 26th in the country at KenPom, and they have 3 wins in the top 25 over Wisconsin, Purdue, and Iowa. Losses to Pitt, North Carolina, Washington. I'm just a little surprised the body of work comes in all the way at 26th. Seems a bit rich to me. But they just beat Iowa yesterday to get here. Michigan was off. There's absolutely no holes in Michigan's resume. They're 29-2, losses to Duke and Wisconsin by single digits, and a slew of top 25 wins. So you look at the stylistics here. Does Ohio State have the bodies to really contend inside is the question, because Michigan's 30th in effective height. They're 9th if you just look at the forwards. The rebounding gap here is massive. It's 8-99. And then the interior stats all favor Michigan. And unlike the game we just talked about where things are closer than you might actually believe, that's not the case here. Michigan is second in interior scoring. Ohio State is 202nd in total defense on the interior. It's basically, what does Christoph Tilley give you there? And he's a decent rim protector. Let's emphasize decent. Like maybe slightly above average is the best way to phrase that. So I don't know. Michigan is going to get whatever they want inside. And then on the perimeter, can Ohio State shoot over the top? Their bigs aren't really threats. And this offense is basically just, let's find ways to get Bruce Thornton looks. They take too many mid-range shots, play in isolation a lot, use a lot of pick and rolls, and all of that is with the goal of getting Bruce Thornton a shot. And I get it. He's a 40% three-point shooter. Now, one little X factor is Ohio State, before their resurgence, they kind of struggled a little bit. During that span, they were missing Tilley for a bit of time. John Mobley, who's also above 40% three-point shooting. They're close to full strength now, so could they maybe challenge this Michigan team? That's kind of where I tend to lean, especially with the first matchup, keeping it relatively close. But this is another one. Do you really want to put your hard-earned money on Ohio State covering a spread where it seems like Michigan can name their score and you're betting what is the motivation for the Wolverines who have already locked up a 1 seed? I don't know. It's at least gives me some pause. One other potential area to look at, an under. Tempo has dropped. Ohio State is down to 293 from 245. Michigan's also dropped, not by much. They're going from 13 to 44. One thing on that, though, you're kind of already paying a tax on it. So just season-long numbers, we had this projected around 158. So is the slowing pace worth 2 full points? That's a question for me. Michigan's probably going to do their part to get there. So if you like an under, one alternative I might consider is an under on Ohio State's team total. That should be something like, 71.5. Haven't looked at those markets yet. They emerge later, but that's one spot I would potentially be looking at. All right, we're going to some later games now. Miami, Virginia. Virginia's a 3.5-point favorite. The total is 144. I wanted to take this plus a 5 last night. It was sitting at 4.5 when I went to bed, with some money coming in on Virginia. So you think it might go to a 5. Would have played a 4.5, would wake up and it's 3.5. So just the perils of going to sleep during conference tournaments, even if it's for a short period of time, which I can tell you, I did not sleep much last night, but even in the short period I laid my head down, this moved to a spot where I was uncomfortable with. So shame on me for being a coward and not taking the 4.5. But Interested in the Miami side and still might play the 3.5. Both of these teams are healthy. They already played, and Virginia won 86-83. They did not have Devin Tillis, but that was on February 21st. They actually outshot Miami inside, but then they were even from three. The reason Miami kept it close is they were unstoppable on the boards. They out-rebounded Virginia, and they had 12 offensive boards. Body of work for both teams is relatively incomplete. Miami has 2 losses outside the top 50. Same thing with Virginia. As far as wins go, Miami has 1 in the top 25, 4 in the top 50. Virginia has 1 in the top 25, 8 in the top 50. So neither team has really played the highest end of competition. But rebounding, both these teams are top 15. Height-wise, both these teams are top 66. Effective field goal percentage, it's pretty good on both ends. Miami's 25th, and they play a very unique style of basketball. It's like a poor man's Arizona, where they don't shoot any threes, but they're going to try to play in transition when they can, attack the offensive glass, and then kick it into their front court with post-ups, high-lows. And their 2 best players down there are Malik Renew and Ernest Uday. Trey Donaldson kind of facilitates the whole thing, and when they take an occasional three, True Washington's a good shooter. The offense has been pretty good. Now, Virginia is kind of the worst possible matchup for a team like this because they limit transitions. They're awesome protecting the rim. Johan Grunlow and Ugonna Onyenso are both 7 feet. Testa Ritter's 6'9". They have a lot of good rim protection. The best way to beat them is driving into the lane at these guys and kicking off for threes and maybe pulling one away if you can. You get kind of the occasional three from Renew, but it's not the best offensive matchup for Miami. But on the other end, Virginia, 60th in effective field goal percent. They do have an advantage that could be exploited. They shoot a lot of threes. They'll play in transition. They use a lot of pick and pops. Otherwise, their guards drive and then kick out for threes. Jakari White shooting 44%. Testa Ritter, his percentage has dropped a little bit from 3, but he's still above average at 34.5%, and he spaces the floor. And then Miami's defense is solid inside, which makes a lot of sense with Renew and Uday, but they are awful on the perimeter. They are 275th. Now, to try to compensate from that, the way they play forces you inside more often, but I'm not sure it's going to be enough against Virginia. On the periphery, Miami forces a lot more turnovers. Both teams do turn it over occasionally, and Miami generates a ton more fouls. Both teams will foul, so those are another couple advantages for Miami. As far as tempo goes, should be very slow. Virginia's already 271st. Miami has dropped to 243 over the last 6 weeks. The model had this Miami 71.7, Virginia 74.5, and basically it's right on 3.5. So like at a 4.5 and a 5, there were enough advantages Miami's direction to potentially play this, but it's not like they're all Miami. Virginia has some as well. So at this number, it's a little bit dicey for me. You could potentially look at an under. You're kind of paying a tax on all of these unders right now because of the way they're being priced after back-to-back games. So we'll see where it goes. Right now, just going to wait and see if Miami doesn't potentially get a little bit better throughout the day. One game we are playing, Iowa State, Arizona, 4-point spread in favor of the Wildcats, 143 total. As far as injuries go, I listed Joshua Jefferson. He was in that bloodbath of a game between Iowa State and Texas Tech yesterday where Christian Anderson went down, Lawan Watts went down. Joshua Jefferson went down multiple times. He was limping all over the floor. I think he's going to play as an absolute warrior, but I would be shocked if he's 100%. And according to analytics sites like Evan Mia, he's the 5th most valuable player to the spread against anyone else in the entire country. The only players that are more valuable are like Boozer and Fears. So yeah, he's like unbelievably valuable to this Iowa State team. If he's limited, that's an immediate advantage. Arizona, who's now getting healthier after they dealt with a slew of injuries and illnesses. And the first time these teams played, which was about a week ago, Arizona won 73-57, outshot Iowa State across the board, out-rebounded them by 7, generated 6 more fouls, defended Joshua Jefferson impeccably. He went 2 of 17 from the floor, didn't allow any open shots for Momcilovic. It was a great defensive plan. And I'm worried that's going to be the case again. Well, I'm not worried. I took the team I think will exploit this advantage. But if you're Iowa State, you should be worried because Arizona's length is going to pose problems. Iowa State's excellent on the glass. It's just Arizona's better. Shooting the ball, Iowa State is dependent on a very specific kind of offense. They have one shooter. It's Momcilovic. He's at 49.2%. And then what does Jefferson give you? Because Lipsey's kind of regressed into being just a facilitator. His shooting percentages have plummeted this year. Jefferson's a decent shooter. He is kind of this hub that they can run a lot of offense through. But we didn't really see any help coming from whoever was defending Momcilovic, and it kind of wrecked the entire offense when they couldn't get shots up. And then there's just so much length from Arizona on the interior. This is the number 2 interior defense in the country. You're basically not scoring at the rim. They don't let you get transitions. They don't let you get offensive boards. I mean, Krivas is 7'2". He's the second best defender in this conference. Burries and Bradley are excellent on the perimeter. Koa Pete at 6'8", playing that wing spot, is a very difficult defender to get past. As we saw in the first game, nothing is going to come easy for Iowa State. And then on the other end, yeah, Iowa State's defense is excellent too. They also limit transitions, boards. They try to force you to shoot over the top. And Joshua Jefferson's ranked 4th in the Big 12 in total defense. Lipsey and Torrey are solid too, but I mean, there's just so much depth here for Arizona. And they don't shoot threes, not because they can't. They're actually 101st in three-point percentage. They're just so efficient with their post-ups and high lows with Karchenkov and Krivas and Pete. They haven't needed to shoot a ton of threes, but they can't. It's just kind of an all-around bad matchup for Iowa State. And then you've got the lingering Joshua Jefferson limping or whatever is going on there. I don't know. Iowa State does force more turnovers. Neither team really struggles there. Arizona vastly outranks Iowa State in fouls drawn. That should be an advantage for the Wildcats. Tempo in the game, both teams are slowing down again. And it sounds like I say every team is slowing down. I promise you there are ones that are speeding up, but Iowa State is down to 271st after being 193rd. Arizona is down to 120th. We make this Iowa State 70.8, Arizona 74.3. That is at full strength for Iowa State. Again, I think there might be a little bit of advantage for Arizona on the health side, and Iowa State did play yesterday. So you get another little bump for Arizona off the back-to-backs. You play the Wildcats -4. Awesome game here, Wisconsin, Illinois. 8-point spread in favor of the Illini, 157 total. Nolan Winter's not going to play for Wisconsin. First time these teams matched up, Wisconsin went 92-90 in overtime, but Illinois did not have Andrei Stojakovic or Kylan Boswell. Illinois actually shot Wisconsin across the board, inside and out. They won the rebounding battle by 3, but Wisconsin forced 9 more turnovers. Well, now you have a secondary point guard back in Boswell. That should immediately help that stat. And Wisconsin's living dangerously without Nolan Winter, especially now you're removing size against Illinois, who is the single tallest team in the entire country, just 1 through 5. So that's immediately problematic for me as a potential Wisconsin backer, if that's the way you lean in this game, even though they won the head-to-head. Rebounding favors Illinois. 7th, Wisconsin's 122nd without Winter. Shooting the ball, Illinois is vastly better than Wisconsin. The only area where Wisconsin even has a bit of an edge is from 3. And Illinois is no slouch shooting threes either. They have the same kind of bigs that stretch you out with like Merkovich, the Ivisic twins. And then Wisconsin's defense is just a bit behind. They're 185th inside, 159th on the perimeter. You're facing the number 1 offense in the entire country. So one other little cowardly thing I did yesterday, this was opening at like 154. Pace in this game is atrocious. Wisconsin's down to 153rd over the last 6 weeks. Illinois is down to 320th. My goodness, this team is slow. So you see something in the 140s and you should be, or the 150s with this kind of pace, you should be hesitant. But my model had this at 160.5. I thought I should wait and see where this goes. It is currently 157. So I easily missed the best number without question. Another just cowardly showing by me. But I think you could honestly potentially play the over on this. And the reason it comes in so high is both of these defenses have plenty of weaknesses. And it's mostly Wisconsin's doing the work there. Illinois' defense, they're weaker against the perimeter, but we've seen them be out-physicaled by teams like Michigan. There are ways you can potentially beat them. And Wisconsin already scored on this team. So it's not the craziest thing to see maybe Wisconsin doing their part. It's hard to say, especially after, they just played yesterday. And the first time these teams played, Winter actually had 4 points in that game. Crazy enough. Blackwell had 24. Nick Boyd had 25. Rapp had 18 off the bench. He had 2 of He hit 4 threes in that game. I don't know if that is replicable, but that's kind of where we stand. Illinois or pass, over or pass for me. Hopefully Wisconsin takes some money and we can maybe get an Illinois spot. We sleep in May. We do sleep in May. We're not sleeping today or tomorrow night. Even when we are sleeping for 3 or 4 hours, we're missing lines. So I apologize. That's on me. Glass 4 is gone for the rest of the Big 12. Thank goodness. Thank goodness that Iowa State game, Texas Tech game was atrocious. Tennessee Vanderbilt. I think that's our next game. Let's see. I'm pretty sure if it's not the next game, it's the second to next game. It is our next game. All right, here we go. I bet Tennessee plus a 1.5. I'm a little surprised by this. Nate Ament played way more than I thought yesterday. We do minute projections, and Nate Ment's coming off the ankle injury, and all of the rhetoric coming out of Knoxville was like he's going to be limited. We don't know how many minutes he's going to play, preserving him for the NCAA tournament. He plays 32 minutes and scores 27 points. 27 points. I had the under 18.5 points. Just got absolutely flamethrowed by Nate Ament. As it pertains to this game, Tennessee is now at full strength. And same thing with Vanderbilt here. I mean, over the long term, Cade Phillips has been out for a while. Frankie Collins left Vanderbilt's team. So that's kind of where we stand on the injury front. But Tennessee's catching 1.5 points, 1 point in some spot. The total's 147. Both of the road teams won in the first matchups. These teams played twice, and Tennessee won by 4 on the road. Crushed Vandy on the glass, which makes sense. They're a lot taller. But Vandy won the second one on the road. The thing is, Nate Ament did not play in that game, and he is Tennessee's best offensive weapon by a mile. And Tennessee still had some advantages in that. Tennessee had 18 offensive boards and lost. They won 40-31 on the glass. And that's the thing in this game. Vanderbilt plays a very specific style of basketball that's actually pretty common to the SEC right now. There's a lot of teams that are small, and the teams that actually have some size are pretty ineffective in their front court, looking at you, Alabama. But in this game, Tennessee is 39th in height. Vanderbilt is 209th. Tennessee is second in rebounding. They are first in offensive rebounding, which they need this. They are 150th in effective field goal percent. They can't shoot. They kind of have realized this, though. Instead of taking threes, they're basically just driving the ball inside or kicking it into some interior scores like Nate Ament, getting something close to the rim, increasing that field goal percentage. And when they miss, you still have Estrella and Okpara and guys that can clean up on the offensive glass, which is their whole offense. Vanderbilt is 177th in defensive rebounding. You're basically playing like McLaughlin and Washington at the 4 and the 5. You're going to be undersized in almost every single matchup, even in the SEC. So that's a big advantage for Tennessee. Vanderbilt's going to shoot a ton of threes. They're pretty good at them. Tyler Tanner and Tyler Nickel are pretty efficient offensively. Duke Miles coming back has helped them. But we know Tennessee's defense, for the most part, is buttoned up, and they are especially good on the perimeter this year with Jacoby Gajewski. They are 30th in perimeter defense. They're not giving you much at all out there. We'll see. One other area of major concern for Vanderbilt is their fouling problem. They are 292nd in fouls committed. Tennessee is 62nd in fouls drawn. The only problem there is Tennessee's horrific at shooting. You talk about their percentages in the half court and their offense. They're 286th in free throw percentage. So even when you get to the line, they're not doing a ton with it. But I was flat out shocked. You see Tennessee win the first head-to-head. Vanderbilt wins the second without Tennessee's best player. Catching points here was a bit surprising to me. Vandy does have the extra day of rest, but we're on Tennessee in this game. Not really sure about it. Oh, I forgot to give you the score projection. We basically had it as a pick 'em. Tennessee 75.1, Vanderbilt 75 on the dot. Still worthwhile, in my opinion. All right. Purdue, Nebraska. Really curious what all of you think in the chat on this one. I think this is the hardest game to project on the entire slate. And it has mainly to do with recent play for these two teams. Both of them have kind of been in free fall. At the end of the season, Purdue loses 4 of 6. Their wins are against Indiana Northwestern. Now, all of their losses in that span were to good teams: Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Wisconsin. The problem was 3 of them were at home. They go out yesterday and beat Northwestern. They didn't cover the spread. So, I mean, even that you could argue was under expectation. And I think the consensus has just been this team is pretty limited athletically and has maybe a high chance of getting to like a Sweet 16, but a very low chance of winning anything beyond that. But Nebraska's kind of been in the same boat. This team was 20-0 at one point, and since then, they've lost 5 times. That's basically the turn of February onward. Now, all of those losses are to top 30 teams. The problem is they have not always been great. So single-digit losses to Michigan, Illinois, Purdue, Iowa, that's pretty excusable outside of maybe Iowa. They just got blown out by UCLA. And their finale, they had to win in overtime against Iowa. I know the margin looks a little bit better there. But both these teams not playing their best basketball of late. As far as the stylistics, I think you could make the same argument with Nebraska. Probably not the most athletic team. Height is pretty even between these teams. Purdue is better on the glass overall, but this is more of a stylistic choice than anything else. Nebraska just does not rebound offensively at all. Instead, they prefer to get back, not allow transitions, which I get. A lot of teams do that. So the better metric to probably look at is defensive rebounding. Purdue is 21st. Nebraska is 45th. The glass should not be a major advantage on paper. And Purdue is the better shooting team. The problem is a lot of their offense comes from pick and rolls or Braden Smith trying to create open looks for like Fletcher Lawyer on the perimeter. They're 13th in three-point percentage, but Nebraska's 9th in three-point defense. And then conversely, Purdue's defense has been an absolute mess this year. Nebraska's actually 7th in total defense. Purdue is 239th on the interior, 190th on the perimeter. Fouls don't project to play a major role. Turnovers favor Nebraska pretty heavily. Purdue doesn't force any turnovers. The problem is when you look at the difference between recent play for these teams, you get some pretty weird numbers. I'm going to give you 2 specific cases. Using the season-long stats, we had Purdue minus 2.7. If you look at the last 6 weeks, this had this Purdue minus 5.7, which I think says more about Nebraska's recent play than anything else. So currently we have this projected with Purdue showing slight value minus a 3.7. I personally like this Nebraska roster a little bit more than Purdue's, but I don't feel confident about this at all. That's why I'm very curious what you guys think in the chat on this game. It's a pretty tricky game overall for me. Matt likes Purdue. I mean, I can absolutely see that. Purdue for me marches for the vets. Nebraska has a lot of vets too. The difference is Purdue's vets have all been here before, and Nebraska has not won an NCAA tournament game. I know this is the Big Ten tournament, but you can kind of play the proxy there. The half man likes Nebraska money line. So the chat is also split. So is my heart. All right. So we ran out of time for some of the graphics, but I do have our handy sheet on the back end. I'm going to pull that up. There's a lot of extra games to talk about, like Houston, Kansas. So we'll get all those. I saw the Prairie View A&M request. Love that. We still need to make some room for Greece, even on slates with some of the best games in the country. So I'll pull this up. If you have a request and want one to talk about first and foremost, let me know, and we'll do that. I see Michigan State. We are going to talk about that one. I did take UCLA, so we are contractually obligated to talk about that. All right. So let's see. I think this looks pretty good. If it's too small, let me know. Otherwise, we're going to search this Michigan State game. We'll start there. Awesome game against UCLA. I know that Michigan State absolutely demolished this team first time they played. It was not particularly close. But then you dive into some of the stylistics in that particular loss for UCLA, 59-82. It was in East Lansing. UCLA has had a horrific road record this year. The only difference now is, okay, you're playing in Chicago, but you've been there for a while. You're not taking these like crazy travel trips and limited rest. They've hopefully adjusted to the time zone. But Michigan State hit 52% of their threes in that game. 52%. Michigan State, the team that can't shoot. Now, they're better at three-point percentage this year, just overall as a team. Last year, they were downright dreadful. This year, they're actually, competent. They still don't try to shoot any threes. They're 240th in three-point percent. But UCLA's 39th in three-point defense. I mean, when you are talking about like outlier performances on paper, this is basically the example you would point to in like a classroom. So I don't really know about, Michigan State hitting 52% of their threes again. The question is, even if there's that regression, can UCLA still cover the spread? And that is where things get a little bit trickier. The model for me has this much closer. We actually have this coming in. I just lost it. Sorry. Too many tabs. We have this minus 3.6 on the neutral court, of course. Both teams are healthy, but where I could see maybe potentially liking Michigan State or just staying away from this game, UCLA does not rebound. They are facing Michigan State, who's third in rebounding, sixth in offensive rebounding. UCLA is 195th and 260th defensively. How do you get to this number, especially being 82nd in height and having a massive center in Tyler Bilodeau? He stands in the corner and shoots threes all game. They have essentially taken the skill set you would give a big man, given that to Donovan Dent. He can't shoot, good at driving, decent rebounder, and then taken, like a guard skill set and given it to Bilodeau. He's immense, but he doesn't rebound, and all he does is shoot threes. So it kind of leads to this really weird composition of offense. Some other areas where UCLA might struggle, they're not very good defending the interior. That's another Bilodeau stat. But they can shoot, even with Donovan Dent being kind of inept out there. They're still 16th in three-point percentage. You kind of have to do that against Michigan State's defense with some of their interior players like Kohler and Carson Cooper and Cone Carr. Bilodeau can pick and pop out there. Basically, the only thing he does well offensively, that is actually scary against Michigan State. And then just across the board, like Trent Perry is shooting 41%. Bilodeau himself is at 46%. He's ranked 11th nationally in three-point percentage. Sky Clark is ranked 25th nationally in three-point percentage. He's at 45%. So UCLA can absolutely fill it up. One other thing, just like if you're watching from a fan perspective, Donovan Dent, Jeremy Fears, round 2, this is going to be awesome. Two of the best point guards in the entire country. Yeah, we talked about Dent can't shoot. He had a horrible game in the first matchup, 6 points. He was 3 of 11 from the field. And Jeremy Fears had 16 points. He was far more efficient. Obviously, he's still doing, some of the foul merchant stuff, but awesome game. I think UCLA can cover this. We played a 6.5. Currently, you're going to find some 6s out there. I don't think that matters a ton. All right, let's bring it back to the chat. Let's see here. Oh, we got a lot. Thank you, guys. So we got Michigan State. Is Cone Carr the best dunker in college basketball of all time? I'd have to really think all time. He's definitely the best in college basketball right now. There's no question about that. All right. Clemson and Duke. So this one's a tough one. I mean, all of the good players outside of Boozer aren't playing in this game. So let's go down to the stylistics. But I mean, no Ngongba, no Foster, no Carter Welling. Both these teams are locked into tournament berths. It's kind of just my least favorite game to talk about in general. It's like, oh, we got some extra games down here. Sorry about that. Those are from yesterday. I missed a game at the bottom too. We'll have to update that after the stream. So sorry if you want to talk about the last couple. I'll fix that at the end. But as far as this Clemson-Duke game goes, it's just like, how hard is Clemson going to try? Welling tore his ACL. Duke's clearly not trying. What they're trying to do is figure out, like, can Boozer, his brother, play point guard full time? It's just handicapping motivation is so nuanced and tough. Obviously, Clemson has more to gain from this. Duke is basically locked into the number 1 overall seed with yesterday's win, as close as it was. I guess one thing I'll be watching, like Clemson basically put 2 guys on Caden Boozer right at the top of the key. They did not let Boozer really get as much going as Duke probably wanted to, and Duke couldn't exploit it. Isaiah Evans got some 3s, so does Clemson try to do the same thing? Maybe. The game is going to be super slow. Both these teams are very, very slow, so an under could potentially be worthwhile. Clemson has pretty decent interior defense, but how much does that fall without Welling? There's just a ton of questions in this game for me. It absolutely will not be one I'm betting with some of the motivation risks, but I mean, it's a good game on paper. If you could guarantee me they were both trying, I would be very interested in this game. Alabama, Ole Miss. I mean, this Ole Miss run has got to end at some point. I can't believe Ole Miss has won 2 games so far. Alabama has not played yet. They've been off. So where is this one? Here we go. It's only 11 points, which is a little bit surprising. But honestly, the model made this 10.3. Ole Miss just isn't very good at anything, which is kind of surprising that they've won these games. They're shorter than Alabama. They're worse on the glass than Alabama, which is saying a lot. Alabama's 151st in rebounding. They don't defend the 3 well, which is very important against Alabama. Ole Miss is 183rd. And they don't score well themselves. They're 229th in effective field goal percentage. So when you look at like outlier stuff, I'm very surprised by this. You could maybe talk me into an over. We show a little bit of value on that, emphasis on a little bit. But this is another game that did not pique my interest right away. We know Alabama's going to play fast. Ole Miss. One thing about their pace is this is the rare team on this stream that has sped up. They have gone from 257 to 59. So we give this about a point of value towards the over, showing it at 164.2. Probably another one that's not going to end up on the card, but interesting nonetheless. Biggest bubble game of the day, New Mexico, San Diego State. This is an awesome game. I really just hope we get a non-Utah State conference champion for a lot of reasons, but the main one, then you get 2 Mountain West teams. So I'm going to have to update this on the stream quickly after I messed it up to pull that game up there, because that is the last game of the day, I believe. So there we go. Here's New Mexico at the bottom. Here is the projected numbers. We currently have this San Diego State minus 1.8. The main thing with them is, they just haven't been healthy for a while. And Magoon Guath is probably my favorite player in college basketball. With him limited, it affects everything. He's extremely long. Their rebounding numbers trail New Mexico's. They don't shoot the ball as well. Magoon Guath can actually shoot some threes, which is shocking. But they're still pretty good at interior defense. This is a close game. A lot of advantages for New Mexico, honestly. Better offensively, better shooting team, better rebounding team, even though they're not quite as solid. They don't force more turnovers, but they project to force more because San Diego State is 200th in turnovers committed. Fouls, they're better there. It's basically just San Diego State's defense and that interior defense to be specific, but New Mexico, they're 51st in three-point percentage, take a lot of threes. San Diego State's 153rd in three-point defense. So I'm somewhat interested in New Mexico, especially considering the health for San Diego State's been a major problem down the stretch. Again, a lot of these guys are playing through injuries, but you don't know exactly how healthy they are. So that's one at least worth mentioning here. All right. Seton Hall, it is a must win. I cannot take Seton Hall. This would be a St. John's or pass for me. I actually looked into this game. It was, my dumb brain has takes on these coming into the day. I think St. John's is significantly better than Seton Hall, but the line is 8.5. The model has it 7.3. Go back and did a little bit of research on, and just remember the head-to-heads these teams played in the regular season. First one was a 5-point game. Second one was the season finale where I bet St. John's. It was 72-65. And part of the reason you get these close games, Seton Hall's better than you think, especially on defense, but they play so slow. Both of those games had 64 possessions. That's way below average. It's just really hard to extend a lead in a game that is played with so few possessions. Any errors you have are exploited and lead to fewer points. So it's the game style doesn't really set up for a large spread to be covered. Seton Hall is actually sneaky on the boards. Despite being 341st, this team is actually 96th in rebounding. They're 12th in interior defense, which is important because St. John's doesn't shoot any threes, which I get. Their 3 best players are all in the front court. Zuby, Ejiofor, Mitchell. I mean, I'm kind of with you on Seton Hall. I would need some more points, and this is probably honestly just a bias thing. I am very biased against Seton Hall. So we'll see on that. Alabama roll here. I think Alabama's going to roll here. Ole Miss got 16 points from Travis Perry. That's not happening again. I tend to agree. I tend to agree. Chris Beard is coaching his chops off, though. Chris Beard is coaching his chops off. He is a good, I will stand on that hill that he is a good coach. Ole Miss is not an easy program to win. All right, next we got a VCU request and a Houston request. I meant to do Houston and forgot, so apologize. We'll start with VCU, go to Houston, and see where we end up. Want to talk about Akron briefly as well. So VCU, Duquesne. I honestly don't think Duquesne should be here at this point, but they did what they needed to do, I suppose. We currently have this 9.2 for VCU, a 154.2 total in this game. And honestly, it's pretty close both sides. Just looking at team totals there, I think VCU is just a vastly better team, really offensive and defensively on the glass, on the periphery. Turnovers, that is the strength of Duquesne, but VCU doesn't really turn it over. Oh, my goodness. This is one I did not realize. VCU 11th in fouls drawn. Duquesne 334th in fouls committed. Holy smokes, that is a vast gap there. And then VCU is actually not a bad free throw shooting team, 133rd. So as you can see, some of these games I haven't had a chance to do a full deep dive yet. This would be one of them, but just at first glance, VCU would be the side I lean to, given the numbers, assuming there's no injuries or anything like that. But let's go to Houston and Kansas. This is an interesting game. You almost want to list Darren Peterson is injured every single game. He was limping around a little bit yesterday. But Kansas is actually a lot taller than Houston. Boards are pretty close. Houston's very aggressive offensively, but Kansas is better defensively. It's pretty tough to stop Floyd Badunga. Taylor's been better inside. Against Senac and Tugler, I almost want to give the advantage to Kansas on the inside. Shooting the ball, both of these teams are okay. Houston is shooting more threes than Kansas, shockingly, but Houston also does the whole, we're going to take a lot of really bad twos, long twos. Kansas doesn't do that as well. But it's a tricky game overall to evaluate. The model has this -5. One thing I haven't heard a lot of people talk about is just like the recent Houston problems of late and their limitations in games, but they still come in 6th in the entire country in terms of power rankings. Now, this is a rematch, so Kansas won 69-56. And it honestly was not a big Floyd Badunga game. He only had 4 points, 7 boards. Trey White had 23 points, and 8 of them came at the line. The only player who was in double figures for Houston was Kingston Flemings. It was an awful game from Senac inside. Tugler played 24 minutes and scored 4 points, which is pretty on par for him. Inefficient shooting performances from both Emmanuel Sharp and Uzan are kind of how you get this outcome. But Houston, despite it all, and despite their current struggles, still was 6th in the country in offensive efficiency. And some of their losses, I mean, just going through them, they haven't lost outside the top 20 all season long. Most of them are narrow outside of that Kansas game. It's single digits against Iowa State, Arizona, and Texas Tech, even Tennessee way back when. Kansas's resume is just way more volatile. You've got losses to Arizona State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, but wins over Arizona, Iowa State, UConn, Duke. I prefer Houston, not by a ton, but we'll see this. I'm laying the points with VCU. It's a bit scary. Big up, Matt Brooklyn. Have respect for you, especially over football season. Thank you. Take the chart off the screen. Why? Do people not like the chart? I didn't have time to make full graphics for it, and that's kind of the whole point. But if you want to just see my face, I don't know why you would want that. I wouldn't recommend it, but I can do that. But yeah, if you have a suggestion, give it to me. Don't just tell me what not to do. You need to give me an alternative, and I will consider it happily. The show is for you, but just taking it off the screen doesn't seem like a path that is good for anyone. Anyway, I think that is all the games I wanted. Oh, Kent State Akron. Last one that I did take hit Akron. What was the number here before we get out of here? 6.5. It's currently at a 7-ish. We'll pull it up at the top of the screen again and then talk some stylistics. Playing Kent State, Yeah, currently 6.5. I see some 7s out there. 2-bid Mac, but Akron is the highest power ranked team in this conference. Interestingly, very good on the glass despite being small, which actually mirrors what Kent State does. Both these teams take a ton of threes and are good at shooting them and awful defending them. But the difference is Akron actually has an interior presence. Kent State does not. Pace is extremely fast in this game, especially Kent State's going to allow some points in transition. Peripheral stats favor Akron as well. You have them forcing way more turnovers than Kent State, 300th in turnovers forced. One area Kent State does succeed is fouls drawn, but Akron does not get into foul trouble. So 6.5 was a good number on paper. And then to back that up, the model had this projected at 8.4. So it's one of the wider gaps on the slate. This one made sense to me, and one we did play at that 6.5 number. So yeah, we'll probably close it out there outside of anything from the chat. I'm on a 65-inch TV and can't read the graphics. Your face is fine. Okay, we'll have to figure out something to do then. I mean, the real answer is probably just get some more of the real graphics back. But thank you for that feedback. It does help. So we will nix the chart moving forward and do something else. Do I enjoy talking CFB or CBB better? College football is always my number one, but love college hoops too. Prefer not to choose, but if you force me to, that would be the answer. But thank you for your feedback. It does help, even if you think the chart sucks. I'll work on a better way to present that information. And hopefully we just have more time for the graphics. But anyway, enjoy the games today, everyone. They're awesome. I appreciate you all being here. And we'll be back tomorrow at 8 a.m. Central Time on Saturday for the championships and the semifinals. But until then, good luck. We will see you guys again next time.